Hello, my marketing and entrepreneur friends. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Let's Talk Marketing podcast, where I, your host, Katya Allison, get to explore the latest trends, techniques, and strategies in the world of marketing. Now, in today's episode, I have the pleasure of interviewing Archita Fritz, a fractional CMO and product marketing leader and workplace advocate. With over 2 decades of experience at renowned medtech and technology brands, she has launched over 25 products globally, contributing to revenues exceeding 2.1 billion. Yep. Sit on that one a little bit, right? Now, during this episode, Archita shares invaluable insights on building successful brands for startups and scale-ups. We go deep on understanding your audience, creating emotional connections, and you know it, effective storytelling and marketing. We also touch on what it really means to go global with your product and marketing efforts. Spoiler alert, it's not just translation, it's localization. Now, Archita shares actionable strategies for navigating company growth, all that, and we sprinkle a little bit of responsible marketing in that. Now, as a listener, you are going to walk away with practical advice and perspectives on building resilient brands that truly leave that lasting impact. Also, she's funny. So buckle up, Buttercup. You know the drill. Grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's dive into it. Let's talk marketing. Archita, welcome to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast. I'm very excited to have you on here to dive into a little bit of bold brand building.
So glad to be here, Katya. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's get to it. I would love for my audience to get to know you a little bit better. So, I've got some standard questions that I like to start off with. I always like to ask, what was your first marketing role? And it could have marketing in the title or it could not, but what was the first role that you were like, this is marketing?
Yes, so I actually have a fun story to share with this. So
Oh, I
I
love
actually
it.
I started my journey as an engineer. So I'm an electrical engineer that
Hmm.
got pulled into quality systems management, and I was presenting to the leadership team about everything that was going wrong with the products at this time. And there was a VP of marketing that pulled me aside, and he was like, "If you ever need a job in marketing, give me a call." And so I'm, 4 years into my career. I'm a quality engineer. I'm in Quebec, in Canada at this point. I'm working for a
Hmm.
company out of Michigan. And so my time in Quebec was coming to an end, and my company was trying to bring me back to Kalamazoo, Michigan, if anybody knows Kalamazoo, Michigan. And so then I'm like, I don't want to go be a senior quality manager. Like, that doesn't interest me at all. I really want to go and explore marketing because I was always fixing the problems after the fact. And I wanted to be a part
Yeah.
of the product development before the fact, gathering customer input before the fact. So on a random Friday afternoon, I picked up the phone and I said, "Hey, Kevin," that was the name of the VP. "Remember me from 3 months ago? You told me if I ever need a job in marketing, I should give you a call. This is that call." And I do not kid you. He was like, "Achita, the girl on my team just put her 2 weeks notice in. Uh, give
Stars have aligned.
It's crazy." And he's like, "Give Dan a call and you have the job." So my first job was I was international marketing for rest of world. So I was just this was the other crazy thing, it was a med device company, very US focused. So I was responsible for the rest of the world. So it was product development, building out the product story for the rest of the world. But I'm so grateful for that
Yeah.
opportunity. And also, a great lesson there is always follow up because there is
You never
magic
know.
in the follow up. And that's how I started my marketing career and my marketing journey. And I love it. I literally love marketing because of that kind of start. So that's my story.
It is really and it's all about, not just following up, it's about making those connections because you really never know. It's all about being in the right time, the right place, the right mindset, which I think is really key in all of those things, and to me, it sounds like you had all of those things. And because you have, like, this engineering background, there's a I believe that there is a high level of organization that's needed to execute big things from a marketing perspective, but it's also knowing how to balance that and creativity and being open-minded to be truly innovative in that space. So it sounds like, you hit the trifecta for everything. This is amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. Make the ask and follow up, and then go crush it in those opportunities.
Crush it. I love it. Now, what are you currently doing? What's your current role?
So, what my current role is, I'm a solopreneur. So, I am a fractional chief marketing officer and my zone of genius is product marketing. And I work with startups and scale ups that are VC and PE
Mhm.
backed across life sciences, med device, technology, manufacturing, and SaaS. So those are my like key industry verticals. But I have a very keen focus on product marketing,
Yeah.
and especially for startups and scale ups at a certain size. It's very founder led for such a long
Yeah.
time, and then they realize they really have to kind of shift it, be really clear on their value proposition, be really clear on their go to market strategy. And I just love coming in and then making it all happen and driving some growth.
Well, and that is a real sweet spot, like that startup world as well too. And you're right, so many of these entrepreneurs are doing it by themselves and they're just kind of bootstrapping marketing. So when you can come in there and you have again like such a good balance, like product marketing is that sweet spot where you have to know how to be creative, but you have to know how the product works. And I think like a good bridge is you become a storyteller, right? You're taking something very technical from an engineering standpoint and saying, okay, well, but how do I translate that out to the world? Now, in
Yes.
knowing that, like, what is it that you love about what you do? But conversely, because there's good and bad to everything, if there's anything you could pluck out of it to make it perfect, what would it be? So let's start with the positive. What do you love about what you currently do?
What I love about what I currently do, gosh, like unlimited opportunity and potential to because I'm sitting in so many different scale ups and startups and industries. There's such an amazing opportunity to like learn from one industry and apply it into another. So when you're sitting in a
Yeah.
corporate world, in one corporation, in one organization, and you're working on a product, your ability to think about how you approach something is very siloed into that particular industry vertical, right? Like this is how everybody does things in med device. You might go read a Harvard Business Review's case study. You might go watch a podcast about something and try to implement it. But sitting where I'm sitting today, where I have an eye on, I work with climate tech, I work with prop tech, then I go work on a mixed reality med device product, and I then go
Yeah.
work with pizza box delivery. Like it's so varied and different. Like AI with pizza box delivery, it's actually a brilliant idea what they're doing there. So the thing is, what I love about it is the fact that I have a chance to cross pollinate ideas across industries
Yeah.
and run small experiments in a structured way to really see the opportunity for like explosive growth, because I just love a growth story, and I get to see like
Yeah.
explosive growth that I we get a chance to then go implement across these different startups and scale ups.
I can totally feel your passion for this, even over like, a virtual video, like scenario here. Like, and that is, I mean, I feel that passion as well too, because there is nothing more exciting than seeing that growth, seeing the glimmer of it, seeing something work as well too. And I also really like that you said, to experiment in a structured way, because it's true, you kind of always have to be. I was interviewing somebody else the other day and we were talking about like, staying innovative, and really you can't, it's never this rinse and repeat. Like we think that we can, but every industry is different. The times change so quickly that what you did yesterday, yeah, could potentially be effective, but you almost have to tweak it a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
Consumers are slightly different, and B2B, it's slightly different, right? Like, so everything's always changing. So that's what you love. Tell me what, if anything, you would pluck out.
Yeah, if anything, I'd pluck out. I mean, I can think
Hmm.
of a lot of different things. Like being a solopreneur is a whole other journey, everybody. So
Yes.
you got to have to shift from being an employee to an employer. Like it's a big unlearning you have to go through. But if I were to pluck
Yeah.
out something, one of the things I see, and I'm going to speak to it from the perspective of my customers that I serve. this is the biggest opportunity we have in the industry, like startups and scale ups. When leaders are building these organizations, they're so focused on like the next funding round, right? They're bringing in the first revenue customers, scaling to the next level. They really lose sight of culture and what
Hmm.
kind of culture they're building. Because a lot of times, a scale up or a startup will bring me in to be like, we have a product problem, we have a process problem. And I cannot think of a single client that I have worked with that it ultimately hasn't been a people problem that we had to fix. And what I mean by people
Hmm.
problem is what they have allowed to be tolerated over years, over months, whatever it might be, because in pursuit of this, very important goal, which I absolutely get. But there's a big opportunity that we do it right from the start, where we create these safe
Yeah.
workplace cultures. Because when we start creating the safer workplace cultures, we create an unlimited potential for growth and innovation, because people feel safe to speak up. So if there's a mistake, if there is a failure in something, you're failing forward in a safer way. Versus what
Yeah.
I notice is that, startups start growing, people are not delivering allegedly like the way they'd like to deliver. They lose amazing talent, and then it becomes it's that employee's problem. Versus, are we doing this
Yeah.
over and over and over again, creating like a toxic kind of a workplace that doesn't give
Yeah.
way to the right kind of innovation and growth, where people feel like the freedom to speak up. So this is what I would pluck away, so you build right, so you don't end up becoming these large corporations or even the Ubers of the world, right, with toxic cultures, but you have an opportunity to fix it as you build.
I couldn't agree more with that. And I I think it's interesting that you turned it around because it's not something that you, from your side, from the customer perspective of what it is that you would pluck out. That value of culture is so key to the success of any organization and any business. And too often it does fall by the wayside, right?
Yes.
Like the fact that you are willing to let talent walk away when talent can make a difference. I actually just said this today to somebody. I'm a big believer that you have to do internal marketing with external marketing, and sometimes that internal marketing is so much more important because if I as the marketing person cannot get the team excited about it, they will
Mhm.
not do big things. They will not think big either, right? Like you have to drive that. And those are all of your ambassadors that go out there to the world. They're sitting at the dinner table, like with their families. They're talking to their friends over the weekends, right? They're talking to other businesses. Every moment is a touch point. And I think too often we're so chasing that bottom line, as we should from a brand perspective as well too, because I mean we're not in this to make friends. I mean, that's a nice benefit, but like ultimately it is a business. But so much of that, we're human at the end, not at the end of the day, the beginning, middle, and the end of the day, we are human. But this is being a brand, being a business, there are people behind that. And it's so important not to forget that.
Yeah, because at some point it's no longer going to be. You cannot just be founder led, especially in the startup and the
Yeah.
scale up. You got to have experts come in. You got to have individuals come in. You got to lean on that expertise. But when it happens once, okay, maybe you didn't pick the right. Maybe I'm just saying a big maybe, right talent. But when it's happening, and you're just like, I'm the only one. If you ever hear yourself saying, "I'm the only one who can do this," that therein lies the problem. Therein lies the problem, that you need to start investigating and ask yourself like 7 times why. Well, why do I think I'm the only one? Well, why did this happen? Well, why? Keep asking. And I promise you, you're going to go into the root causes. You didn't ever created an environment for these individuals to succeed in the first place. Because a lot of times,
Yeah.
as you're building so rapidly, you're scaling so rapidly, you don't get a chance, or you lose sight of what what does success look like for this role, right? And
Yeah.
you don't have to get extremely deliberate, because you're wearing 80 hats when you are building and growing a startup and a scale up. But if you're going to give someone that responsibility of, like, saying, leading your sales team, for instance, give them that responsibility and empower them to make decisions. Because when you're such a flat organization, if you still hold all the power of decision making, imagine as you grow, it's just going to be that much more difficult, where it feels
Yeah.
harder to let go of that.
You can't, yeah, you can't keep up with that too. the goal, especially from a startup perspective, is to be able to grow. I always have so much respect for the startups that are strategic with their growth as well too. They're not focused on like year over year, I'm going to get from, you know, from 5 to 500. I know that's an exaggeration, but I do think like oftentimes startups have this mindset of I have to see this year over year growth in order to be successful. But I also think that's how you burn out. So I don't know. We
Yeah.
could probably have a whole podcast on startups. Like this is, I mean, because it's also my jam. I love it. I love the growth stuff and everything that is associated with it. I'm a glutton for punishment, right? Like because that is also you do wear so many hats. And I think as a marketer, you're always wearing many hats. So
Yeah.
like this is fantastic. I do want to ask you because I am very curious. We had talked about, you said testing different things. I think that's important to be able to understand what's working, but just as important is keeping up with the different trends. So, how do you keep up with the trends and the ever changing landscape? Is there social? Is there a newsletter? Is there a podcast? Do you read books? Like, how are you keeping up with the trends?
Oh gosh. Like, I'm going to be
That's a loaded question.
so many different things. So I love the fact that post COVID there has been an uptick in live events. So I
Yeah.
honestly engage with my community first. So I go and I attend up to how I can because I really manage my energy because there are more events than you can attend. So I look at the
Yes.
strategic events with regards to the industries that I'm serving for the customers or any like specific events focused on scale up growth or like VC backed scale up growth or private equity growth, etc., that are in my area. And I go sit in on the conferences. Sometimes I raise my hand and I join panel discussions because it's a great way to kind of again infuse yourself with different perspectives and ideas. And a lot of times at these events you get introduced to like a case study from a company that you or a startup that you had never considered, like the use of like now AI is all of the rage. It's being used everywhere. Literally I've seen
Yeah.
AI in all applications across the board, which is great. But it's such interesting perspectives. Like recently, I attended Startup Week in Dusseldorf, and
Mhm.
we had Infosys, which is a large, software professionals, whatever services company. They have an innovation hub. It was the most engaging 45 minutes of my week that week, just to see how technology was being used in so many different ways. All the way from,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question, Katya. Do you know what is the most um, dangerous job in the world? Just
A
guess it.
window cleaner.
A window cleaner. Well, very close. So it's so crazy. The
Really?
power lines, very close, but power lines that go across.
Yeah.
So there are individuals that are dropped from a helicopter. They have, imagine like a mop on their hands and two
Yeah.
mops on their knees, Katya, and they go and they clean the power line with their hands and their knees. That's what
I
they
didn't
do.
even know that was a job.
Can you imagine how dangerous of a job it is? And we are in 2024, and we have humans like as if it is like Neanderthals cleaning a power line like hundreds of thousands of feet, like whatever, thousands of feet up in the air. And so what this group did was create robots. Right now they're expensive, but then
Yeah.
the robots go and it saves lives because of course these poor people putting their lives in danger, which is absurd. And it cleans it in a more technologically advanced ways. So I get a chance to see a lot of new interesting innovation and the way in which
Yeah.
product is introduced to market, etc. So events is one. I highly encourage people to attend events. I'm also a
Mhm.
mentor to a lot of startup accelerators, which is amazing
Mm.
because sometimes we have these speed network not networking speed mentoring events. So I get to speak to 10 startups in 3 hours as they come to me with questions they have, like very specific questions. And so I get an opportunity to really utilize all aspects of my learning to be able to help them with that one key problem. So it gives me a chance to
Yeah.
see ahead as well, to think differently. Then I follow Emily Kramer from MKT1. Highly recommend her. She's on LinkedIn.
Okay.
You know her. I probably are familiar with
No, I don't, but I'm going to. I asked the question so that I stay up with the trends. Like,
her.
what is everybody else doing? And the amount of information I've been able to get just by asking this question is really huge. And that's why I like to ask it for the listeners as well too.
Yeah.
So everyone go follow Emily Kramer.
Yeah, Emily Kramer, like she's not asked me to speak about it, but I love her work because it's very tangible. She has a course on Maven as well. So if anyone is interested, like go highly recommend attending her course on Maven.
Nice.
The other person I would recommend following is actually it's not a person, but it's a company. It's fullfunnel.io. They have a
Okay.
newsletter, but if you're especially looking at go-to-market strategies, how do you build your funnel, especially like in the commercialization stage, they have amazing playbooks where you're not having to reinvent the wheel. And if you are a first time CMO, I would highly recommend you go get the book, especially in the SaaS and tech space. It's a book written by Alice DeCourcy. I hope I'm saying her name right, her last name. But it's called The Diary of a CMO, a first time CMO. And it's such an easy read and it's brilliant. She's used a lot of her posts because she
Uh-huh.
documented every single day of her journey as a first time CMO. And it's so valuable because you learn through the lens of doing, which is exactly what we
Yeah.
want to do when we're working with the startups and the scale ups, etc. And then this is the last person I'm going to say because I spend way too much time on LinkedIn, as you can see. There are a lot of amazing books, and I'm not going to rattle off a bunch of books right now. But this person I would recommend following only because he really stays on top of all the AI trends. So as a
Yeah.
marketer, if you're like, oh, I need to do this, this, and this, literally just drop onto his thing. His name is Andrew Bolis, Bolis, and he pushes out a bunch of carousels. And I've seen his growth explode. Like he was at 5,000 followers when I was at like 3,000 followers at the end of last year, and he's now at like almost 100,000. Only because he puts out
That's
great,
wild.
valuable content, like really valuable. You know, everything from how do you use AI for like things like video, all the way to creating very detailed email campaigns, storytelling, everything. So there are just a million people's names I could like rattle off, but I will just leave you with that. Those few
I
folks.
you have like I don't want to end the podcast now, but I am saying like we could end it now and there are already some really juicy tidbits, actionable insights that people can take to them. And it is really truly why I like to ask the question because this is I need to continuously be learning as well too. And I think that as a marketer, you also get inspiration
Yeah.
from everything, from other people's experiences, from what you see on social, from what you read in a book, from what
Yeah.
you listen to in a podcast. So I'm always looking for those nuggets. And I think those all lead to building out your brand, which is what we wanted to focus our conversation from a strategic standpoint.
Yes.
From a oh my goodness,
You're
from a
fine.
strategic standpoint, that is where I really wanted us to focus our conversation today. So I'd love to dive into just, asking you the questions. What foundational elements are crucial for businesses to aim at for establishing a strong brand presence, in your opinion?
Yeah. So, it depends on like all the things we love to say, right? It depends. But it's like when everyone's like, Archita, what do you think about this? And I'm just like, okay, listen, first of all, nothing is black or white. It does
Yeah.
depend on, where they're at in their brand building journey, etc. But I have like these three key elements I always talk about. And I didn't make this up.
Okay.
I read this somewhere. So just being careful. I'm not taking credit for this, but I like it because it's simple. It's ABC, it's
That's fair.
it's been really clear. I always say I'm built on borrowed ideas that I then amplify and accelerate. You know?
Oh my, we are all built on
Yes.
borrowed ideas. I mean, like I guarantee you I'm going to use one or two of these and then like put it out there in the world and be like, "Did you know XYZ?" So I can't wait for it. Tell me the three things. Tell me the three
So
things.
it's really simple. It's ABC, so audience relevance. So when you're building your brand, who do you, and you cannot stress this enough. Do you know your audience? Like I'm working with a client right now that has been in business for 10 years. It's a startup, it's Series B, but they're still speaking the language of the internal team. You cannot tell your stories based through the lens of how your founder sees the industry, how your
Yep.
internal opinion leaders see the industry. So I cannot stress how important this A is. Truly understand and the relevance to your audience. Are you creating either, you can choose either or, a problem driven, audience relevant interaction or a possibility driven, audience relevant interaction? However, you might choose to go down that journey, focus on your customer. Like it just shocks me. It shocks me
Yeah.
every day when I speak to
Yeah.
someone and I'm looking at their messaging, and I'm like, either sometimes it's even it goes so bad as it's your your investor focused messaging. How can you
Yeah.
how can you grow and build a community of, like, a tribe, or like a group of customers who are like just like so enthralled by your product if you're speaking your investor language, right? You just can't. So
Yeah.
audience relevance is super critical, and that's A. The second one is, no brainer here, but build that emotional connection. And I can't stress this enough. I mean, you could be any product. I assure you, you don't have to be a sexy product in any way, shape, or form. It could be as simple as, um, I'm thinking of a med device product, but I'm going to share this. When you get into a hospital, you get onto a stretcher, which is a piece of equipment that the nurse or whatever pushes you from point A to point B. We were trying to get our sales team to get really excited about this new product that we launched, but we had just slight changes, very slight changes that we made to the product, more from, like, aesthetics, etc. But from a product lifecycle management, it was the right thing to do. And we were like, man, how do we get the customers excited, and the customers and our internal customers excited at this point, which is our sales team. And so I shared the story of my dad, and this was really, really true, right? So I had always had a vision to have a product I'm from India, for the Indian market, and this product was only ever available in the US. And so we did all the work we had to do, get it ready for the Indian market. After launch, we launched it in India, and not just the Indian market, it was for 120 plus countries, and India was one of the countries. And it was just so happy because finally we're seeing great med device technology here. 2 months or 3 months later, my mom gives me a call and she's like, your dad was on the treadmill, he fell, he got hurt, he's in the hospital. I'm like, okay, like, is he alive? Is he okay? Like, what's going on? They just send you the worst text messages in these situations, which you just don't know, like, what is going on. And then she said,
You're like, I need more information.
it just says something like dad hospital. I'm like, okay, dad alive? Like, I need to know. Anyway, so this is like unreal. I just love moms. I'm going to be that mom, 20 years from now to my kids for sure. But then she sends me, like, about 2 hours later, like, radio silence, we're calling nothing. My dad is on the stretcher, and he's smiling, and he literally has like a voice note, and he's like, I'm so glad because my daughter's stretcher saved my life, right? And it's just like, and that's the story we shared from the stage. It completely shifted perspective of how our sales teams, like, approached a stretcher that they'd always pushed around, to see the impact it can make when it is their own family member. Because while we are making this product, our own family could be using this product that we are making. Forget the other patients that are out there, right?
Yeah.
And so the value in what it can do for that caregiving journey or whatever can then become a really emotional journey, versus
Yeah.
like, oh, we have a new product, we change our brand colors, it's now red and white instead of blue and white, right? So there's
Yeah.
always an opportunity to build emotional connection, even for a few pieces of metal and rubber and wheels. You can even do that for something like that. You
Yeah.
don't have to be B2C for that. And the last C of ABC is clear messaging. And I know a lot of content writers talk about it, but I can't emphasize this enough. People get so excited, myself included, in being clever. But when you are clear,
Yes.
oh my gosh, magic happens, right? So
Yeah.
that's my ABC, I would say. Audience relevance, what was it? Building emotional connection, and C was clear messaging, are like my three key pillars for good storytelling.
I'm obsessed with this because I do think it is really key, and it is all about, like, those are the elements to building a brand story. The brand story and storytelling. I talk a lot about this. I talk a lot about storytelling and authenticity because you also have to be true to yourself. And if we can have, like, a double A in there and have authenticity be part of it, I think, like, that's definitely full circle.
Yes.
I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on what it takes to become, I'll use quote marks here, like, sticky as a brand for your consumers, whether it's a business or, like, a consumer at the other end of it. What do you think it takes to become sticky and just build that brand? I don't know if it's brand equity, but more on, like, brand loyalty.
Yeah. So you mentioned something which was authentic storytelling, right? So
Yes.
um, so first of all, I would start with like it depends only because there is your audience
Because it does depend.
does depend on like what matters to your customer. So if you're really clear on what is going to drive that stickiness for your customer, like why are they going to keep coming back, in some
Yeah.
cases it's going to be the fact that every time they pick up the phone they can get a hold of customer service in 2 minutes, right? So when you look at that entire
Yeah.
customer journey, and you cannot avoid, you can't just be like, we've sold the product, boom, done. It's that after sales, especially if I'm just talking about physical products themselves or even a piece of software off the internet or any kind of tech that you buy, look at that customer journey and look at points in that customer journey where you can build brand evangelism and stickiness, right? So
Yeah.
what was broken before that you now fix and add value to, or you amplify and do even better, right? And if you don't do it very well, like if you just do it the same, also acknowledge that, because that is important. Because if you start telling a story of like, oh, we have, I'm just making this up right now, 24/7 customer service, white glove service, blah blah blah, you create this
Yeah.
of course a disillusion, like perspective with regards to what they can expect at one point of their customer journey. So while the whole first part is just glorious, and the whole experience of like purchasing the product was best in class and everything else, once they have it, if they cannot you cannot repeat and keep that customer joy or whatever you might want to call it, because
Yeah.
you haven't addressed the fact that either we do it well, we do it great, or we're learning, because people will be okay with that. You just
Yes.
have to bring them along the journey as well. So I would say that look, be authentic, but be articulate about how your brand purpose unfolds across that entire customer journey and how you bring it to life, but not from your perspective, but through the lens of the customer.
From their perspective. And what I'm hearing is in order to become really sticky and build that brand loyalty, it is about understanding who your customer is and giving them what they need when they need it is how I describe like evaluating that customer journey and like, okay, if they are at this point, this is like the biggest need that they have. So let's deliver it and infusing it with these moments of customer delight. I used to really hate that term customer delight because it always sounded really cheesy. But
Yeah,
I do think like that's ultimately what you're doing because delight is such a like, this is unexpected, but I have so much value at
yeah,
this moment for you giving me this because
yeah,
you get it, you get me, you see me. And that is where loyalty comes in. When
yeah.
someone can see you, it's not being perfect, right? To your
No,
point of what you said, like it's okay if you make mistakes. That
yeah,
is being authentic. Like I'm going to blunder my words. That is who I am because I am not a robot and I'm probably not going to end up editing it out because that is how I speak, right? I feel like you can take that same mentality as a brand. I think oftentimes though, brands remove the humanism. I
yes,
don't know if that's a
yes.
word, but
That
like
humanizing,
they
yes.
remove like the personification because I have to be this big brand that's this logo and to your point these colors and all of these things, but like when it comes down to it, to be sticky, you have to really make that connection.
Yeah, and I mean, and you can start, the connection can start in so many ways and spaces and places. And I would say, like,
Yeah.
don't lose that opportunity. It starts in market discovery, it starts in market research. Just when you're even building your brand, you can start authentically building this group of individuals who are so excited for this product to come to market, especially if you're like
Yeah.
a scale up, even if you're a large corporation, quite frankly. We used to do customer advisory boards, and customers used to be a part of the product building. And so when the product would come out, we'd go to exhibitions. Customers would walk by from that customer advisory board, and they would be so proud. They'd be like, "I helped make that product."
Yes.
And that, imagine how what stickiness that creates, right? So they
Yes.
move from one hospital system to the other. They just feel so connected to this. So don't think that you only have to build your tribe once you have a finished product. You can start building right from the beginning if you are clear on what is that brand purpose and like the authentic way in which you want to start telling your story as you're building that brand as well in the market.
Now, what do you think outside of a couple of things that you've already talked about? Culture was a big thing, right? And uh, speaking or meeting the customers where they're at, those are two big things. But in your opinion, what are some kind of key challenges that you have seen brands kind of have to overcome when it comes to building out their brand? What are some of those challenges and how have you seen them overcome it? Or maybe they haven't overcome it, but I'm interested to hear, based on your expertise, what some of those challenges are.
Yeah, a few different things, and I'm trying to think. It's like a whole swath across size of business and industry, but I'm just going to share a couple, three of them. Yeah. So the first one I would say is if you are a startup or a scale up, one of the biggest challenge in the early months or early years, sorry, is we don't have a marketing budget, right?
Mhm.
Because you're going to reinvest it in different spaces. They're just like, I can't do social media. Like I can't be here. I can't do PR. I can't do this. Like it's a lot of I can't do a lot of different things. But a great way to start is just founder led market. I literally ask them, founder led brand marketing is a great place to start. Literally, it's
Okay.
easy. You know your product, you understand your customer. And I know sometimes this is really hard because you have a very technical founder and they're just not comfortable, like, getting on LinkedIn or like whatever it might be in spaces. So as you're building out your team, try to build out a team that can help be that for you. So you don't have to go invest in like copious amounts of like marketing spend or ads or any of that nonsense as you're building up your company. So think of organic founder led marketing in the beginning as a startup, as you're building your brand. It is possible. You see so many, like Bobby's an amazing one, like just so many like consumer brands I see, B2B brands that I see where start there was one that actually just launched yesterday, and I'll go check him out. Hugo Pereira, he just launched his company out of stealth called Ritmo, and it's about helping productivity of product managers in technology companies as they're getting products to launch. Okay, very niche, but niches win riches. But he kind of built this whole.
You are saying some things that are just tickling my funny bone today. Like,
Exactly,
just
literally
get
that,
riches.
right? Um,
I have a question about like when you're talking about founder led marketing, does that tell me what you mean literally? Is that like the founder is going out there and it's like I want to say grassroots. Yeah, I do kind of want to say grassroots. Is that what you mean by like a founder led marketing? The founder is doing
Yeah,
that.
like she or he or them, they're like getting up on LinkedIn as a very basic example. I'm giving a super basic example.
Yeah.
And they're just like, hey, we were at this exhibition today or whatever. We're at this trade show today. We're demoing our product. This is what we learned. Customers are super excited about this, blah, blah, blah. Like there is this amazing founder. I'm forgetting her name. She's made the first human robot. She's based out of Asia somewhere. It's called Andromeda. She's brought us along her entire journey of building this robot, like how it's worked, how it's interacting with the robot's hypothesis is based on interacting with this aging baby boomer population for them to
Yeah.
have physical interaction, and it's just beautiful. But she's brought us along that entire journey, right from prototyping all the way to like
Yeah.
MVP, all the way to like, hey, we've gone through our first round of funding. And so here you're building community, you're building connection, you're building enthusiasts who are so obsessed with this kind of technology, who want to be a part of the journey, which could then be people you could pull on as talent for your company because they've already,
Yeah.
your community becomes your talent pool, your community becomes your customers, right? And then you also get a chance to almost in a safer space because you've started building this as you're going to market or whatever, test out ideas to be like, hey, you've been a part of this journey for us for so long. We're getting ready to go to this. What do you think? Right. So you really have an opportunity to bring your community along. So that's what I mean by founder led marketing. And it can be done in many different ways, So
Yeah.
on panels, if you look at events, etc., because this stuff is the cost of customer acquisition is smaller. I mean, it's cheaper. Sorry, not smaller, but it's cheaper, and they get a direct feed to you. It's direct feed. It's not
Yeah.
through a lead generation form somewhere sitting on some server that is not has the world's worst carbon footprint. It's another story for another
Yeah.
day. But yes, so I say brand. Sorry, just to wrap up really, because I know we're also at your time limit here. But
We have all the time in the world. I told you, don't look at the clock.
okay, good. So we said, so that was the startup. But if you're like more, like I say, an SME, like a small, medium-sized enterprise or a larger corporation,
Yeah.
right? One of the biggest challenges I see with brands is when they're going from their core market to other markets, like their global.
Mhm.
My gosh, they get it so wrong. Like it can really mess up. With regards to like assuming, in America, they love, like as an example, we like to be strong. We'll talk about being strong, efficient, and this and that. But when you come to the European market, they probably just prefer safety. But when you don't understand what drives the purchasing decisions of your customers in the local market, and one of
Mhm.
the biggest challenges I see is the problem market fit of even a very well developed product in a core market, like an original local market, might not be the same problem market fit in a new market. So before you are even considering, you're like, oh, the product is going to fit great because they go to the groceries, they all buy milk, great. But if you don't recognize that, I'm trying to think of an example. Why did I pick milk? That 80% of the Gen Z population in Germany is going vegan. You know,
Yeah.
it's not the right percentage, but it's somewhere up there. And then you're like
Yeah.
there, and you're just like, hey, we make milk, and it's milk, whatever. You're kind of recognizing that the problem does not even resonate with them.
Yeah.
They don't have that problem there because they don't even drink milk. So
It's localization.
yes, and so localization beyond translation, because this is where people just stop. They're like, I translated it. I have 10 customer service representatives. Life is good. Let's go. But truly understanding how to show up there is really, really critical in that local to global, like flywheel is what I call. Um,
Yeah.
and then just the last one, and this is such an important topic and it's just so close to me. And please go follow Lola Bakare, Bakare. Her book is coming out here soon, next year in 2025. It's called Responsible Marketing. If brands don't understand how to unlock profit with purpose, they are not going to be living and standing in the future, no matter what we say, even oil and gas companies, I mean, across the board, and brands really shy away from this and they really struggle with this because there is, there is a large social movement that occurs or war occurs. Brands don't know how to handle geopolitical and other cultural movements today in a way in which
Yeah.
it still resonates and recognizes that they have a really diverse audience. They do not have one type of customer anymore.
Yeah.
So really understanding how can we incorporate that right from the beginning. And we all have a best, the best example for me, I always can, there are many, but the one we all know of is Patagonia, right? Like they're so true to their purpose. Ben and Jerry's, I love their New York super fudge ice cream, by the way. But there are some consumer brands and there are some other like non-consumer brands as well. So really consider how can you unlock profit with purpose and do it
Yes.
knowing that the only thing that's going to be constant any in the future years is going to be this constant shift of cultural changes and movements as much as geopolitical changes and movements. And what is your voice going to look like as a brand and how is it going to evolve in those times?
Listen, I could talk to you all day because those, I mean, again, you drop so many insights from like your origin story to even these last three of like, and ending on like responsible marketing. And we have like little mini podcasts that we could do in between all of these subjects because I feel like we could definitely dive deep. I have one final question for you before we do sign off. And it's my usual. If you knew then what you know now, what is the marketing or non marketing advice that you give to yourself?
If I knew then what I know now, what is the non-marketing advice I would give myself? So I would say you're familiar with the spotlight effect. This
Mhm.
applies to marketing and non-marketing thing is get familiar with the spotlight effect early in your career. I got comfortable with it like very later on in my career where it's a psychological phenomena where people tend to overestimate the extent to which their actions and appearance are being noted by others. Okay. So you're going to,
Okay.
we all have this like extremely, what's it called? Disassociative belief of how everyone's watching everything that we're doing. Nobody gives, and I swear on this podcast, nobody gives
Yes.
a shit. Like literally, no one's paying attention. So take risks, risk, do experiments as a marketer, listen to your customers, and try different things out. And I mean this both personally and even like for your brand and for your company. Try it out because you don't know if it's going to stick if you don't try. And so I talk about the second thing, which is like this power in imperfect action. So get
Yeah.
familiar with the spotlight effect and recognize that there's power in imperfect action, and go take that action and make success, defined and delivered your own way.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Thank you so much for coming on here. Like, we have to just continue this conversation because this has been absolutely amazing. And those last words of wisdom from like the spotlight effect, I think that's such a great way to end the podcast too. Like, really just don't be afraid. Put yourself out there. No one thinks about you more than you.
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you for having me, Katya. Appreciate it.
I hope that you enjoyed that episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. She just had me laughing for days. I think that anybody that has connected with me or talked to me since having this delightful conversation with Archita has heard me basically re-quote her over and over and over again. Now, let's dive into the key takeaways, or else I'll just talk about her dry sense of humor this whole time. So, the first key takeaway that I have for you is customer-centric marketing. Now, Archita talked about focusing on customers in marketing strategies, really emphasizing the need to truly understand your customers, being just kind of the key to building that strong brand presence. And it's not just about what you offer, right? It's about knowing what your customers really want and they need. It's that customer centric marketing. Now, I'd double down on that thought and say it goes beyond superficial demographics. You really need to uncover things like desires, aspirations, motivations, preferences, and so on. I know that sounds like a lot, but as a marketer, these are some of the things that gives you the ability to tailor your strategies and really kind of quote unquote show up for them, right? Show up for your customers. You know why else this is important and that it stands out for me is because we live in this age of just hyper connectivity. When you know your customer that well, you are in a much better position to kind of just anticipate the shifts, anticipate the needs, and dare I say, even maybe proactively meet the needs of your customers and audience. Pivot and adapt, my friends. But you can't do that with blindfolds on. So make sure that you really dive in and get to know your customers. Now, key takeaway number two. This one is near and dear to my heart because working for a global company, what does that mean? And I think a lot of times people think it is just translation. I said it in the introduction of this podcast as well too. It can be really confusing for people, right? Now, she mentioned that expanding from your core market to a global market really poses as a significant challenge for brands because of this. Now, from her perspective, brands overlook the need to adapt their product market fit with the local nuances, which partly means understanding that what works for one market may not work for another. This is a key piece to international. It's a blend of localized insights and an overarching brand consistency. Ultimately, as a brand, you have to be agile, be culturally sensitive, and keep a commitment of kind of just continuous learning and adaptation. That helps drive penetration into the global market. Don't force it. If it's not right for that local market, don't force it. And again, that goes back to kind of the customer centric as well too. You have to really know your customer to know where you're going to be from a global perspective. Now, my final key takeaway is the role of responsible marketing. Now, I didn't expect for us to talk about this, but I love that this came up. So I really wanted to give it some love in the key takeaways. Now, Archita made a really strong point about responsible marketing's impact on building a brand. It's about businesses staying in tune with social and cultural shifts to really authentically connect with their audience. Now, she highlighted the needs for brands to blend purpose with profit, noting that those who don't risk that, not those who don't risk that, those who don't risk, that's what I want to say, falling behind. Now, in today's world, brands must really navigate a lot of diverse customer needs and global events while still staying true to their values, right? You can't be all things to all people. Now, this means creating a brand voice that can adapt to changing cultural landscapes and that one that really resonates in an authentic manner deeply with their customers. A couple of brands that she pointed out, which I always want to give a little shout out and love too, but companies like Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's were her examples of successfully integrating purpose into their brand identity and demonstrating that it is really possible to maintain profitability while staying true to your core values and, more importantly, to social responsibilities. What did you take away from today's episode? I want to hear it. Post it on the Let's Talk Marketing LinkedIn page or YouTube channel. Leave it in a review on Apple. Slide into my DMs. Let's keep this conversation going. A special thank you to my podcast editor, Johnny Ike. And thanks to you for spending your time with me today. Until next time, may the conversations flow, the laughter linger, and the outlook remain optimistic but grounded in reality. This is Katya signing off.